This is shuttle launch control at T-minus 3 hours and holding. Our countdown is proceeding without any technical problems, and our activities are on schedule. Final inspection team continuing their activities, which have gone well with no reported problems. And here we are in the crew dining room, where we see the STS-87 mission emblem cake. Mission specialist Winston Scott will be doing the EVA on this flight. Mission specialist Takao also will be doing an EVA on this mission. Our commander Keven Kregel for the STS-87 flight. Our payload specialist Leonid Kadeniuk from the Ukraine. Mission specialist Chawla, who will be operating the RMS for the Spartan deployment. And finally, our pilot Steve Lindsey, who will be working front camera during the mission, among other things. We are in the suit-up room with our STS-87 astronauts. We're looking at our commander, Keven Kregel. And here is pilot Steve Lindsey. He'll be operating from the flight deck the small basketball-sized camera. And mission specialist Chawla, who will operate the remote manipulator system and deploy and retrieve the Spartan payload. Mission specialist Takao, who will be participating in the EVA on this mission along with Winston Scott. And next to him here is Winston Scott, who will be also doing the EVA during the flight, along with Takao. And our payload specialist, Leonid from the Ukraine, who will be investigating plant growth biology in space. This is shuttle launch control at T-minus 2 hours, 56 minutes, 55 seconds and counting, where we see the STS-87 astronauts now are entering the elevator for the ride down 2 floors from the astronaut quarters to the astronaut van, which will transport them the approximately 7-mile distance out to launch pad 39B, a ride which will take approximately 20 minutes or so. And we see some KSC employees behind the chain. The Astrovan now approaching the pad perimeter, where they'll then leave the van and go up the elevator to the orbiter access arm and meet the closeout crew ready to assist them in boarding Columbia and into their seats. And here we see our commander Keven Kregel preparing to board Columbia. And there, Takao is the mission specialist who will be boarding next here very shortly, as soon as Keven Kregel boards the orbiter.
Well, this is actually a view from the flight deck, and now he's climbing up into the commander seat. Keep in mind that everything is in the vertical here. He's getting assistance from another astronaut, astronaut Joe Tanner. Right now he's just positioning himself in the seat. It's very important that they get in the seat straight. They've got some emergency oxygen bottles strapped to their back on the harness, and then they'll be laying on top of the parachute. And they could be in there for upwards of 3+ hours today. And it's very important that he's in a position where nothing is in his back. There'll be 2 people working on him. There's several connections. Here you see Takao getting into the middeck, and what we try and do here is strap one person at a time in both the flight deck and middeck. So this Takao is MS3, and he'll be assisted by another strap-in personnel on the middeck. Now once Keven is strapped in and has his cooling and oxygen hooked up, they'll begin to put on his helmet. And that cord there will be hooked up for his communications. Following his strap-in, they'll do some communications checks just to make sure that everything's in line before they move on to the next crew member. Here's a shot of Leonid in the white room. Looks like he's got his harness on, and he'll be waiting to be the second person on the middeck. There's the pilot, Steve Lindsey, climbing into the flight deck. He'll ask Steve to reach up and grab 2 handholds, and this particular maneuver here is very similar to just doing a pull-up. He's pulling himself up into the seat, getting his feet in position. Joe, you see, is holding on to his emergency oxygen bottles to keep them on each side of the parachute, and then they'll begin the process all over again of getting Steve positioned correctly on the parachute for comfort. Here's a great shot of Leonid. He's in the seat now, the second crew member on the middeck. They'll be hooking up his cooling at this time. This is our first flight of a Ukrainian on the shuttle.
TLS, what is it?
TLS, go.
Yeah, 534, pick up by the clock.
Okay, TLS copies, and we need a CMTC on channel 162, and we need to read step 535 on the OIS.
NTD, MS1, com check.
MS1, it's NTD. Good morning, I've got you loud and clear, KC.
Good morning, Doug. I also have you loud and clear.
Attention all stations, this is the NTD performing a launch status check. Verify ready to resume count and go for launch. Say go, no go. OTC. Go. TBC. Tank and boosters or go. CTC. Go. LPS. Go. Houston flight.
Houston flights go.
Myla. Myla's go. SCM. SCM go. Safety console. Safety console go. SPE. SPE's go. LRD. LRD's go. SRO. SRO's go. You have a range clear to launch. And CDR.
Columbia's a go.
And I copy all. Launch director NTD. Launch team is ready to proceed. Copy that. I'll do a poll. Payload director.
Payloads a go.
Engineering director. Engineering go. Safety and mission assurance. Safety and mission assurance is go. Range weather. Roger, sure. No constraints launch. Copy that. Ops manager. MMT is go for launch. Copy that. And Columbia looks like we're ready to go. So we're going to proceed. MTD, you're clear to launch and have a great mission.
TLS is go for orbiter access arm retract.
Columbia OTC, close and lock your visors. Initiate O2 flow. Have an international Thanksgiving and may the roll go your way.
Thank you very much.
20,
Firing his chain is now armed.
15, 10.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Engine start. 5, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff of Space Shuttle Columbia on a mission combining science and the practical aspects of space.
Roll program, Houston.
Roger, roll, Columbia.
Houston now controlling. Roll maneuver complete. Columbia now in a heads down wings level position, headed to a 150 nautical mile orbit, inclined 20.5 degrees to either side of the equator. Three engines on board Columbia now throttling back to 67% of rated thrust as the orbiter passes through the area of maximum aerodynamic pressure in the lower part of Earth's atmosphere. Three engines now ramping back up to 104%.
Columbia, go at throttle up.
Columbia's three liquid fuel engines are now back at full throttle, 104% of rated thrust. Altitude now 11 miles, downrange distance 8 miles. One minute 30 seconds into flight, with more than 2.25 million pounds of propellant having already been consumed, Columbia now weighs half of what it did at liftoff. Standing by for the next major event, which will be the burnout and separation of the twin solid rocket boosters. That coming up in a little more than 2 minutes into the flight. Altitude now 20 miles, downrange distance to KSC 19 miles. Booster officer confirms good separation of the solid rocket boosters.
Columbia, performance is nominal.
Nominal performance.
Commander Keven Kregel now rolling a videotape shot from a camera mounted on the forward flight deck of Columbia, looking back aft. On the right side is Commander Kregel, left side Steve Lindsey in the foreground, flight engineer Winston Scott directly in the middle behind them, and to his right, mission specialist Kalpana Chawla. This video of the launch, there's main engine start and liftoff.
Columbia in the middeck club box.
Go ahead.
Takao is finishing that up. And Al, you can probably tell by the lights that was the roll to heads up.
Thanks, Kevin. We were kind of looking for that. We saw it.
It was really pretty smooth.
The crew is planning to work with a number of experiments that are associated with the United States Microgravity Payload, which is a platform of experiments in the payload bay overseen by NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. Those experiments are mounted on a support structure in the back end of Columbia's payload bay, which is also filled with that Spartan satellite and also the extended duration orbiter pallet of cryogenics. There's a series of experiments. The one on the television now on the downlink from the orbiter is the isothermal dendritic growth experiment, which is an experiment that hopefully may improve manufacturing processes involved in the production of steel, aluminum, and various superalloys that are used in the production of automobiles and airplanes. The investigation is designed to unlock advanced processes that will create some new alloys that may be stronger and may even have better control and more reliable properties than are currently available here on Earth.
Houston, Columbia for Solcy.
And go ahead for Solcy.
Yeah, Mark, just to be sure we're all synced up here, I hold myself to begin DTP startup in about 2 minutes, and we are all set up here to record the door opening.
And we copy, and you can start any time, and we have it on the downlink.
Okay, great.
This is Mission Control Houston. This television from Columbia's cargo bay showing the shuttle ozone limb experiment as the door opens. The instrument will begin its first observations of the mission. It observes the Earth's horizon from orbit and from ultraviolet light reflected off of the Earth's limb or horizon. Gauges the amounts of ozone present in Earth's upper atmosphere. Also underway is an experiment on the lower deck of Columbia in a glove box unit that will be the focus of several different experiments during the flight. In that glove box at present is an experiment called the wetting characteristics of immiscibles. This video is from that glove box experiment. This experiment, again being done in a glove box on the lower deck of Columbia, studies metal alloys and mixing of those metal alloys and wetting effects that are caused as those alloys are melted and mixed, and that can sometimes cause layering as those alloys are created, looking at ways that wetting could be alleviated.
Houston, Columbia, we're going to bring you to the flight deck.
And we're ready.
At the aft flight deck, mission specialist Kalpana Chawla will be joined by pilot Steve Lindsey tomorrow for the operation of the shuttle's 50-foot-long robot arm and the deployment of the Spartan satellite, which is scheduled at 3:03 p.m. Central Time tomorrow afternoon. Again, Kregel is pedaling the bicycle ergometer on the aft flight deck of Columbia, being watched by Leonid Kadeniuk, who has been operating the Q experiment today, the collaborative Ukrainian experiment, which investigates the progress of plant growth in the absence of gravity.
Columbia, Houston, for TGDF deactivation, if you could give us a status on that.
Just starting it up right now.
Copy, Steve. Columbia, Houston, the Orbit 4 shift is now trading places with Orbit 2. It's been a great first day for us. We've really enjoyed it. You're off to a great start, and Jeff Bandel is here with his team, and Ellen Ochoa will be talking to you, and look forward to tomorrow working with you on the Spartan deploy.
Thanks, Mark and Bill. I appreciate working with all of you, and we'll see you tomorrow.
This is Mission Control Houston. This live television picture from the end effector camera on the robot arm of Columbia being operated by Kalpana Chawla from the aft flight deck control panel shows the end effector being moved in place for its eventual closure on the grapple fixture on the Spartan science satellite, which of course, as you see by the sign, is managed by the Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland. The end effector now closing in for grapple on the Spartan satellite.
Columbia, Houston, everyone's go for unberth of Spartan as soon as you're in attitude.
Okay, we'll go for unberth once we're in attitude.
Columbia, Houston, you have a go for Spartan release. On time.
Roger. Go for Spartan release. On time.
Houston, Columbia at D1 plus 3.5 minutes, and we do not see Spartan doing a pirouette, so at D1 plus 4 we plan to re-grapple.
Columbia, we concur.
And Houston, we'll get a little tip-off rate. It's rolling around. We'll go ahead and grapple.
And we copy.
Yeah, Mark, we're trying the best we can. It's got a pretty good rate on it. We're just trying to match it.
Understand, we know you're working really hard, and we're looking at other possible options, and we'll get back to you. Columbia, Houston, Kevin, for your information, we've got enough prop in the forward RCS, another 5% margin before we're going to have to make a decision about separating. We'll keep you posted on that. When we reach that point, we're going to have to go into a separation, so we'll keep you posted.
Okay, we'll try to get it.
And that would be based on separating and being able to rendezvous subsequently with it to try to get it back. Yes, Kevin, what we're thinking of doing is a little later on today performing a phasing burn. And tomorrow carrying on with our original plan, which is to do the EMU checkout. And the following day, performing a rendezvous with Spartan and an EVA recapture. And we would like you to do a little thinking about it. It's obviously very early in our own thinking, and we'd appreciate any feedback from you, and we'll keep you abreast of any development in this plan.
Okay. Copy all. Thanks, Mark. Winston in the airlock at this time.
And Keven, that's what we're seeing. Great to be with you down in the airlock or up in the airlock.
This is Mission Control Houston. This view shows mission specialists Takao and Winston Scott as they finish up checkouts of their spacesuits that they'll wear on a spacewalk currently planned for Monday. All of that checkout going very well so far. No problems reported by the crew members. Doy and Scott will spend another couple of hours doing EVA preparations, spacewalk preparations, going through the procedures here to restow the gear in the airlock and prepare the airlock before that spacewalk. And also then going through the tools that they'll use and making other preparations to have those in order ready for the spacewalk on Monday. This television from Columbia showing payload specialist Leonid as he works with the collaborative Ukrainian experiment. Kadeniuk is a Ukrainian payload specialist flying on board the shuttle, the first Ukrainian to fly on board the space shuttle. The collaborative Ukrainian experiment is a plant growth experiment that studies 10 different plant growth experiments that will operate during Columbia's 16 days in space. In conjunction with the plants and pollination of plants that is being done on board Columbia in the experiment, students are also participating by performing similar experiments on Earth, both in the U.S. and in the Ukraine. The experiment studies the effects of weightlessness on plant growth in general, and specifically on pollination of various plants and weightlessness. These views showing some of the payloads in the cargo bay. These payloads, many of them have been operating throughout the mission, mounted in canisters in Columbia's payload bay. They include various technology experiments studying new technologies that can be used on future spacecraft. Among those are a study of a heat pipe technology that can be used for cooling a passive cooling system that would include no moving parts, being studied for possible use on future satellites. That experiment is called the Loop Heat Pipe Experiment. It's sponsored by the Center for Space Power at Texas A&M University in Corpus Christi, Texas. Also, another experiment in the cargo bay, along with the heat pipe experiment, is called the sodium-sulfur battery experiment, looking at how sodium-sulfur batteries can operate in weightlessness, a possible source of battery power for future spacecraft. Other experiments in the cargo bay that have been operating throughout Columbia's mission include the turbulent gas jet diffusion flames experiment. That experiment seeks to understand the characteristics of turbulent gas jet diffusion flames and weightlessness.
Training session underway, as we see Jerry Ross here, is to evaluate the handling characteristics of the satellite. He and his colleague Jim Newman have been passing the mock-up of the Spartan back and forth to understand and get a good feel for its handling characteristics. The Spartan actually weighs in at about 1,200 pounds. Of course, in space with microgravity, it really has no weight, but its mass is still there, so it is the prudent thing to do to understand the handling characteristics of the Spartan satellite. So they'll continue this training session for another couple of hours in the water tank, which is near the Johnson Space Center here in Houston. And this wider view gives a better idea of the size of the satellite in relation to the two astronauts. And again, in this view, Jerry Ross is on the left and Jim Newman is on the right. They are distinguishable by their air hoses, which obviously are not used in space, but underwater they are. And Jerry Ross's is red and Jim Newman's is white.
Scott and Doy in their restraints on this television live from Columbia, showing on the left astronaut Winston Scott, and on the right astronaut Takao Doy. Scott distinguishable by red stripes on his spacesuit. In position for the retrieval of the Spartan satellite. As we continue to watch live television of the Spartan satellite, also in view is the tip of Columbia's mechanical arm. Commander Keven Kregel flying Columbia around to position Scott and Doy for the capture of the satellite. Scott and Doy have been spacewalking now for 1 hour and 45 minutes. Columbia is above the Pacific Ocean off the coast of Southeast Asia. Its course will take it south above the Central Pacific.
Are you able to reach the... I can reach it. Okay, let's hold right here. Let's stop right here. Okay. Kevin, if you're ready, we'll do our thing.
Okay, I'm free drift. You gotta go.
Okay, Takao. Yes. Now, one more time. Can you reach the scope? Yes, I can reach it. Okay. On my signal, I am going to grab a pin and the GPS target. Okay. And as I understand it, you're going to grab the scope. Is that correct? That's correct. Okay, I'm going to give you a standby capture. That's what I will say. Okay? You understand? Yes. Okay, are you ready? Okay. Standby, capture. Okay. Now I've got my end. I got my end. Okay, now that we've got it, Mr. Doy, yes, let's decide what we're going to do with it. You hold on to your canister. Yes. Let's roll the Spartan right so that it's level in the bay and I can reach my canister. Do you understand? Yes. Okay, let's do that very, very slowly now. We are going to pitch the Spartan down. Okay? Okay? Pitch Spartan down. Okay, let's do that very slowly right now. That's a good rate right there, Mr. Doy. Okay? Looking good. Keep it coming, looking good. Keep it coming. Keep it coming, looking really good. Okay, let's stop right there. Okay, stop. See what we got. I think that looks pretty good. Okay, I'll tell you what, we need to, let's level it out. Let's just level it. Okay? Okay. Now, let's bring it in my direction, just maybe an inch. Okay? Okay, let's stop there. Now, let's bring it forward about an inch. Now, let's stop there. Okay, now, can you see your guide? Your guide? I can see it. I can see mine. Okay, let's bring it down into the top of the guide. Very slowly. I can come my direction. Now these in between two rock backs. Okay, same here. Looking good. These to come my direction, just maybe a half an inch. Okay. Now let's bring it on down. And bring it down more. Okay.
Stop. All stop. I think the roll cue we need to give you from inside here.
Go ahead.
And Takao,
yes.
you need to bring your side down so it's a roll.
Okay, how's that?
It's still not level. So Takao,
yes.
look.
Okay.
And that looks good. And the arm is coming down.
Okay. Yeah, the boom is now horizontal. I'm pitching up.
Copy, Takao.
With us in Mission Control providing insights is astronaut Tammy Jernigan. Tammy, Takao is extending the crane, turning that handle without foot restraint, and from a body position that looks somewhat difficult. Is that on purpose?
Well, one of the things that we hope to evaluate during this crane checkout is various body positions to facilitate operation of the crane and also to have insight as to where that crane boom is going. That crane boom extends out to over 17 feet, so obviously you have to have good visibility into where the crane's going so you don't bump into anything, but you also have to be able to operate the mechanisms, and right now Takao is trying different body positions to see which is best to operate the crane.
Columbia, Houston for Keven.
In the foreground, you can see the power tool called the pistol grip tool.
That you just read to us.
And Takao has used that to extend the crane. The crane can be extended in a motorized fashion or can be extended manually by rotating a handle. There are 3 handles on the crane. One is to move the crane from side to side or yaw the crane. The other is to move the crane up and down or pitch the crane. And then the third handle is for the manual extension and retraction of the crane.
Takao, your backpack is very close to the Spartan telescope. Takao, 1 counterclockwise.
Okay, 1 counterclockwise.
Alpha 4.
Alpha 4 is set.
Motor.
Motor is set.
And 3.5.
3.5 is set.
You're going to fully...
And Tammy, with the battery now on the end of the arm, they're going to be doing the same evaluations that were done earlier with the arm by itself?
That's correct. They will be, again, maneuvering the crane from side to side and up and down and in and out. Roll and pitch and yaw and extension and retraction with the battery on board. Again, the battery and subcarrier weigh close to 500 pounds, and so you're going to look at the handling characteristics of the crane when it's loaded up as opposed to the handling characteristics when there was nothing on that crane. Having completed most of the operations with the crane loaded with the battery and subcarrier, the crew is now ready to remove that subcarrier from the end of the crane and then reberth the subcarrier into the guides on the sill. Takao is extending the battery across the payload bay to its stowage location.
Columbia, Houston, we're getting beautiful video of that. That's a real nice view.
And Winston, the battery is coming towards you.
Okay. There's release. Okay, Takao, pitch the crane down, please. Okay, pitch it down the crane. The release position, lock position, lease position, and soft dock position of the subcarrier itself, the actuator, I give it A. All that mechanism worked really nicely. Okay, Steve, would you move me starboard out of the bay, please? How about starboard?
Takao is moving the crane out of the way so that Winston, with the help of the RMS operator, Steve Lindsey, can put the subcarrier and battery into position to berth back into the payload bay.
It's relatively easy to control. Okay. Stop. Stop. And also, Winston, I had to move you up a little bit to make sure your tethers would clear, so that may have been why. Okay, that's great. No problem. Thanks for letting me know. United States 宇宙からこんにちは。データがです。ウィンストンと私は素晴らしい EVA をやることができて本当に満足しています。宇宙から見る地球の姿は本当に素晴らしくて、本当に胸を打ちます。また、地球から目を離して、宇宙自体を見上げると、その壮大さに本当に感動します。宇宙が私たちを呼んでるような気がしました。皆さん本当に応援どうもありがとう。Okay, Keven, I'm finished.
Great, you've had enough fun. Time to put your toys away and come back in.
Okay. Okay, tethers are configured. I mean, they're inside of the carrier box. They're all latched down, flat retracted. And yours truly is going to make his exit, or make his entry, whichever you look at it.
Okay, Winston, then Takao, once you get in, set water on.
Okay, Colleen was all right.
This television is from Columbia. This television view of the isothermal dendritic growth experiment actually located in Columbia's cargo bay as part of the United States Microgravity Payload. The IDGE experiment, as it's called, studies the crystals that form metals on Earth, those crystals called dendrites. Dendrites can be formed much more purely in weightlessness and in much more pure form than they can in Earth's gravity, thus hopefully providing scientists a better insight into the basic structure of metals.
Huntsville, Columbia for glove box.
Go ahead, Casey.
Yeah, I have the top focus right now, as you see, and I think you can see what's happening to the particles a lot better out here. And you can see sometimes when the particle reaches the interface, it just joins the collection and another collection gets dislodged, goes in a very different direction, so you lose track of the particle altogether.
We copy that, Casey, and appreciate your focusing in these different levels. That's going to help the team out. I think it'll make it easier to measure the particle sizes.
Oh, sure.
This is Mission Control Houston. This view coming from one of Columbia's payload bay cameras, looking down on the Earth as the orbiter 452 nautical miles above the surface of the Earth, passing over the central portion of Africa.
This downlink video that we're receiving from onboard Columbia right now is a recording of what's going on with the WFCI, or Wetting Characteristics of Immiscibles experiment.
Have a good downlink.
This is Mission Control Houston. This video is a shot of one of the experiments on board in the microgravity glove box, the particle engulfment and pushing by solidifying interfaces experiment called PEP by its acronym. This experiment is designed to help investigators better understand the behavior and movement of composite materials products as different samples are frozen or solidified from one end to the other. The processing of metal composite materials uses the properties of various types of components to attain the desired composite strength, which is dependent upon the even dispersion of particles throughout the metal. So it's of great interest to understand the behavior of that particle and movement within the metal composite materials.
And KC, the PEP group says they owe you a bouquet of flowers for this beautiful, beautiful video they're getting.
Yeah, it sure looks good.
This view from one of the payload bay cameras looking up at the shuttle's robotic arm attached to the Spartan satellite. The red dots on the satellite, the targets that will be used for this experiment operations with the video guidance sensor. this experiment using the Spartan satellite as a target, and we'll collect tracking data both when the target is moving and also when the satellite is in a static or a fixed position. And as mentioned, the orbiter will be maneuvered as well to allow the video guidance sensor's performance to be tested under different lighting conditions, also 16 different positions as well as distances by maneuvering the robotic arm to various locations around the payload bay. The video guidance sensor testing visible now with the laser targeting underway. This is position number 7.
We're seeing it through the mid-deck input and through payload 3. Apparently the flight deck input is on a different camera. And that's it.
Certainly is.
And that config is good for us.
Great. Houston, Columbia from VGS.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and auto position number 50 dropped out, broke lock. Watched it for a while, and it's getting lock and then breaking lock. It's just kind of going back and forth.
We copy.
And I'm proceeding on to the next point.
Copy and concur.
Minutes to sunset.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, here we go. And that was successful. I have a successful soft dock. Again, there is compliance in the crane. It moves a little bit, but not very much. I guess maybe 6 or 8 inches before I got soft dock. I'm going to release it and try that same thing one more time. Okay, it's released. It's back in soft dock. I'll do the same thing. Now, of course, I'm looking underneath the cable caddy at the grid and the dogs to be sure that I line them up before I insert it, but here we go again. And I have soft dock. That was good. I'd give it an A for the small ORU. That was real nice. Takao, would you yaw the crane just a bit more towards me, please? Okay. Yaw the crane towards you. That's good. Thank you. Stop. Right there. Okay, the far dogs are in, and I'm going to rock it. Yeah, I got a good, successful soft dock the second time with the sideways. I've got A4. I need 3 counterclockwise, and MTL is 23.5, Casey?
Yes, Winston, all of those are good, and it's going to take 5 turns.
5 turns, roger that. Here we go. Okay, and there's 5 turns, and I'm sure you're watching there, Casey, and maybe Houston, but you could see the work site move away from me as I attempted to depress the guard deck to drive the boat. I can only move maybe a foot, and I was able to do it successfully. With oscillating during the pitch motion, but it's pretty stable. Okay, yawing. Okay, 6-inch extension has been removed from the tool. Let me put the tool back in the bag. Incidentally, the tool, that rig is big in the bag. I sort of jammed it down in there. The BRT is holding the tool bag in place very nicely for this series of tasks. So I want to translate with it back again before I make some kind of final comments, but it's looking pretty nicely.
Yes, seems like it.
Let's just see if you can set the slide pin. Yeah, you got it? Good. Yes. That was the easiest it's been thus far. Yeah. Okay, all 4 are done. We're complete, Casey.
Yeah, Winston, and it looks very good from here. If you want to head towards the sprint retrieve with the ORU tether, you can transfer the ORU tether at the adjustable tool stringer and then get sprint.
Okay, I'll do that.
And Columbia. Houston, you have a go for sprint release.
Roger, Winston, you have a go to release.
Okay, Steve, here we go. I've released it, and I'm moving back out of the way. Oh, 6 ring inches. Oh, about 4 inches is still out of reach. Keep it coming. There's a couple of inches. I can feel the thrusters on my gloves. Okay, I've got the free flyer.
Copy that, standby.
Yeah, let me get a tab on it before you disable it.
Commander Keven Kregel is now flying Columbia. And Kregel's now flying around the imaginary heading alignment circle. This is a 230-degree turn, setting up for final approach to runway 33.
Columbia, on at the 180.
On at the 180.
This unique view now out looking as if you were sitting in the pilot's seat aboard Columbia. Time to touchdown, 2.5 minutes. Altitude 22,000 feet. Traveling 410 miles per hour.
Columbia, on at the 90.
On at the 90.
And Kregel now setting up for the final approach. Altitude 15,000 feet. Traveling 380 miles per hour. Just about 8 miles south of the runway now.
Runway in sight, Houston.
Copy.
About 1 minute, 10 seconds from landing. Runway 33 in sight. Again, this is a view out Steve Lindsey's window. Just under 5,000 feet now. Time to touchdown, 50 seconds. This view of the heads-up display showing the speed at 300 knots and altitude 1,000 feet. The landing gear is now down and locked. Main gear touchdown. And nose gear touchdown. Columbia's rolling out on runway 33 at the Kennedy Space Center, completing a 6.5 million mile journey that included circling the Earth 252 times. STS-87 is the 12th straight and 19th of the last 20 missions to end with landing at the Kennedy Space Center. The United States Microgravity Payload mission becomes the 7th longest in shuttle history and the 41st to end at the Kennedy Space Center.
Welcome home, Columbia. Excellent landing, Keven.